What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Show. I'm your host, Reed Simpson, along with my co-host, Dylan Wilcox. Dylan, 64 games, 19 videos, 929 minutes of content, 9,798 views and counting, and one GOAT. With that, the 2022 the 2022 World Cup has come to an end. What a tournament it was.
Man,
we said on last week's episode, I feel like I've just watched a soccer game every day for the last month. They've all been fun. So many penalty shootouts. You had flops, you had rising stars, you had people announce themselves to the world on that stage. It's just been an incredible tournament. I think in the end, we got the championship a lot of people were hoping for, at least one of the finalists. And in the end, I think most of the world was satisfied with Argentina coming out on top and Messi, Lionel Andres Messi, getting his World Cup title. So what are your thoughts off the bat, just as the curtain closes on this World Cup? What do you think?
it was phenomenal on the field. It's hard to say much more than that, but it was absolutely incredible on the field. I think we've talked about it time and time again on the show. The hype and excitement it's built around the game before we host here in North America is awesome, and super exciting to see. For the final itself, what more could you ask for? I mean, it was an Argentina masterclass for the first 60 minutes, 67 minutes probably. And as soon as they took Di Maria out, I don't want to say that's why it got close, but it was for me, a head scratcher of a decision. When you've been dominating, I get the idea of wanting to go defensive at that point, but you've been so dominating offensively. I would have pressed the pedal a little bit more, but in the end, it worked out for Argentina. Messi got his. He got one of his goals on a questionable penalty. Made it feel a little dirty for me as a more unbiased observer. I've said time and time again how big of a Messi fan I am, especially if you make me pick Messi or Ronaldo. I'm very happy we saw Messi get a win. Selfishly, as an American, as the game was going on, I went, all right, so I kind of hope Argentina comes up just short so we get Messi again. But man, seeing Messi finally hoist a World Cup trophy is fantastic. I think it's something the sport needed, something the sport wanted. So overall, despite the questionable officiating at times early in the match, which I do think got evened out, and despite my American bias of hoping Messi comes in 26, I don't think there's much more you could have asked for from a final. For times, it seemed like it was going to be Argentina dominating, and France showed their colors in the last 30 minutes or so, and pulled back and made it one of the most, if not the most, entertaining finals that we've probably seen, at least in my lifetime. And I am an Italian fan, and so I mean, seeing Italy win it on penalties, I've talked about on the show before, was electric. That was kind of what brought me into soccer a little bit more, but this trumps that. Just from a pure soccer perspective, it was amazing, and I think it's something that the sport needed and wanted, and it was awesome. I mean, I was buzzing. I had goosebumps throughout the last 35 real-time minutes of that game. It's like you could just feel it building up, and it was incredible. I don't know how people can sit there, watch that World Cup final leading up to NFL football, and say soccer is boring. And that's almost the biggest thing for me. Yes, I kind of selfishly, like I said, want Messi to be here in 26, and I don't think he will be now. But as from a growing the game perspective, that is everything you could want as an American soccer fan trying to grow the game, because you can't sit there and tell me it wasn't entertaining. I was watching with two of my buddies, or three of my buddies, one of whom is a huge soccer fan, and the other two are very much not soccer fans, and they were incredibly into the game come the end of it, and that's what we were kind of looking for and hoping for from this World Cup, and it delivered on every facet.
Yeah, it was really hard not to be into that game, whether regardless of how you feel about the sport in general. I obviously saw people say, yeah, of course it was exciting. It's the World Cup final. You've got two of the best teams in the world going back and forth, two of the best players in the world. And yeah, that's the case. But, it just regular soccer games can be like that also, without maybe that level of potential risk versus reward, or, the outcome being the World Cup final. You're winning the World Cup final. Not every soccer game has that, obviously, but
Yeah, you tune in
you
on
you you
Tuesday. You tune in on Tuesday to Carabao Cup, and there will be a game that feels like that. There just
yeah.
will, and it'll be against a League Two side in England versus a Premier League side. But like it will happen, I promise you. There will be a game that has that type of energy and that type of excitement around it, and it will be a Carabao Cup fourth round tie. Like it is there in soccer if you want it. You can find it outside of sure people see on the surface Man City beating Bournemouth week in, week out type of stuff in the Premier League, or you look at Bundesliga and Bayern just dominating. But like those matches are there to be found if you try and find it in soccer. And you really don't have to even look that hard. You could argue you have to look less hard than you do some NFL games. And shout out to my Lions. Making the playoffs. It's coming. It's happening. I make a rule. I'm wearing this old Calvin Johnson jersey.
That is old. Yeah.
Make a rule that I don't buy anything Lions unless we make the playoffs. I've not bought a Lions piece of paraphernalia since 2016, but it's here, it's coming, and in a way, without comparing the Lions to Argentina, because we are not Argentina. There is that excitement though around Argentina right now because it is a team that has felt at times cursed. They were able to recently win the South American Cup and kind of overcome those hurdles for Messi. And you can find that in this sport, and it's there. And there are infinite storylines available, and the World Cup provided, numerous. We saw our first African team make a semifinal, and just look up and down this World Cup. It was electric. It was amazing. And this final was the perfect bow on top of your Christmas present, if you will, for what was an amazing World Cup.
Yeah, you said it was one of the best World Cup finals of all time. And I mean, we just have to call it like it is. It was the best World Cup final of all time. I know you've got your Italy bias or whatever,
Right.
but it was like
Yeah.
consensus. I mean, people that wasn't even a question of whether it was the greatest World Cup final of all time. I saw numerous tweets questioning whether it was the best sporting event of all time.
I mean, especially when you throw the Messi narrative on top of it, why not? I mean, it was comparing football again to soccer. It was as if Tom Brady had done everything possible in football for our American fans and just not quite gotten that Super Bowl, but we all know how special Tom Brady is. And this is the Super Bowl of Super Bowls. It happens once every 4 years. And Messi came through. And it's just that type of storyline where you see Tom Brady is well regarded, right or wrong, as the GOAT of quarterbacks. And Messi, for a lot of people, you included, was the GOAT of soccer going into this game, regardless of the outcome. And we finally saw him win the championships of championships, and it was special, man. Like I said, I got goosebumps. My buddy who's a soccer fan got teary eyed. It was a really special World Cup final.
Yeah, it was. It's hard to even compare. I agree with you on the Tom Brady thing, but it's almost impossible to compare anything in American sports to what we've seen Messi do. The World Cup, it's so difficult to win. And it's literally the last trophy that Messi had not won. He's won everything else. So, yeah, man, the numbers aren't out yet, but FIFA expects that game alone to have had 1.5 billion viewers, which would, it would beat 2018, and it would be just by far the most watched sporting event of all time. And I would be very surprised if it doesn't at least hit those numbers. I would expect it to be a little bit over, just because as the morning felt on, you felt like more and more people were getting on board if they weren't already.
Yeah, I saw numbers flirting with 4 billion. And that seems ludicrous. I don't know how trustworthy that Twitter account I saw was. But the fact that somebody could put that out and immediately I don't go, that's a lie, just speaks to how large this event is and how pivotal this was for Messi's career. I think we'll kind of dive into Messi as we go along in the episode. But I think for me, he didn't need this win to cement his legacy. He was certainly a top 3 soccer player of all time going into this. For me personally, he's still top 3. I'm not ready to say he's the one, the only, the best ever, but a lot of people are, and I can't argue it. No, you roll your eyes all you want. I can't argue it. He's not for me, but certainly the best I've ever seen in my lifetime. And then you get into the generational debate, the LeBrons versus the MJs. Like, you could go on and on about how the game has changed. How would Messi have looked in Pele's years. Like, I get that. But purely from a numbers standpoint, he's at least firmly in the conversation now as a top 1, 2, or 3 footballer of all time. And we got to see that on this stage, 2 goals in a World Cup final, bested, if you will, a hat trick from the best player in the world. Mbappé is still him. I will not get off of that pedestal. I will not come down from that mountain. That is the mountain I will die on. He is him. And Messi just was able to, if you will, outlast him in a way. And it was really special. I think tactically, to dive a little bit deeper into the game, Argentina did everything that they could have done to capitalize on France's weaknesses down that left side. There was room to be had with Mbappe needing to press forward, and we saw the changes that tactical strategy from Argentina brought on for France. I mean, if anybody told me going into the game Giroud was being subbed off before the 40th minute, I'd call you crazy. But France was forced to make that change because of the way Argentina was able to expose that left side. And
they were being bludgeoned.
As soon as they did expose that left side, they started exposing the right side. I mean, like, no matter what France did tactically, Argentina had an answer, and that's, as we talked about leading up to it, as we've talked about throughout, that's just something Argentina couldn't have done in the past. It was a new Argentina side that we hadn't seen, a creative, tactically Argentinian side, and they were able to expose the very few weaknesses France had, but they were able to find those and expose those early on. That being said, I mean, credit to France. You're down 2-0 in a World Cup final to Messi when 75,000 of 85,000, and that's probably on the conservative side, are pulling for Argentina and Messi, and you're able to claw your way back. I mean, that does speak to France's resilience. I don't think this loss should taint any, success or any accolades in the French side. I think the performance they were able to put forward in that last 25 minutes was remarkable. And we saw it time and time again. They were able to battle back, and it wasn't the game they wanted to play. Again, I've said this the last 3 games France has played. It wasn't their best game. They didn't look good. And they were able to force it to penalties. And that just speaks to the French resilience and how dominant this French side is. And moreover, that speaks to how impressive this Argentina win is. I mean, they didn't, no offense to Croatia, they didn't just beat Croatia in the finals like we saw France do 4 years ago. They beat the best team in the world. And yes, Argentina won. You can't tell me France isn't the best team in the world right now, though. And Argentina and Messi were still able to overcome that dominant French side and pull out a victory tactically. It was phenomenal to watch. It was I'm going to say it was special like 15 times. We should make that a drinking game, but it was special. I loved every minute of it, and it was great to see Messi kind of finally have that support tactically, where he was allowed to open up space in the midfield and play his game.
Yeah, so a couple things on the game in general. I'm going to push back on Mbappé a little bit. Just a little bit. 2 of his goals were penalties, first of all. His volley was unbelievable.
One of the best goals you'll see.
Yeah. But he was pretty damn neutralized when he was on the wing. I mean, that first half, he was nowhere to be found. He certainly did not have the performance that he probably wanted to have. Granted, he scored a hat trick, and
hard to argue that, but yeah,
special.
right. I get where you're coming from, and they were able to neutralize
when they moved him centrally. It felt like he was in better positions and was able to facilitate the ball a little bit better. It just felt like Argentina had a plan on the wings. To me, they almost felt like they were allowing themselves to be overloaded in the midfield, but they weren't. Like France was they were so bad in the first half. It was really weird to see. And, Di Maria had a lot to do with that in the first half. And I don't know what the subbing him off deal was.
That was early, man.
I don't know if he hasn't been fit, right?
Yeah. Well, he was at the beginning of the tournament, and then he hadn't played the last few matches. But for me, I said two things live that you kind of already touched on. Messi having to move central, I think, was partially defensive because we saw them getting overloaded on that French left side. But also, I think it very well was like, if you're France, we're comfortable moving him to the center because he's not working out of that left side like we've seen him work out of that left side
You
time
mean
and time again.
Mbappe? You're
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
Mbappe?
Like subbing Giroud off to move Mbappe centrally, I think was partially due to the lack of offense he was able to create on the outside, and partially due to the offense Argentina was able to create down France's left side. And then the Di Maria piece, I said it live. I was shocked that they're going to go that defensive that early, and to me it clearly seemed like a defensive move. I mean, they switched to a back five at that point, and it seemed early. I get you're up 2 goals in a World Cup final, trying to get Messi his World Cup title, but it felt early. As soon as that change was made, I turned to my buddy who is a soccer guy, and I was like, "This is early. Like this is France. Like at the end of the day, like you are still playing France. You're not again. No offense to Croatia, you're not playing Croatia. You can't fully sit back against this French side." And I do think it was a decision that was made too early. However, they came away with it, so it's kind of hard to argue with the results. But that is literally the only gripe I have with the Argentinian game plan was subbing Di Maria off that early when you saw how much he was able to create down that French right side once Mbappe was moved central and that left side was less exposed. He was able to really continue to capitalize as they tried to even out their defense a little bit. And that was something I kind of saw him bringing into the game, whether they wanted to play him down that left side to expose Mbappe more or let DePaul, who had been very good down the Argentinian right side, continue his good play. The strategy surprised me. I kind of expected to see Di Maria down that side, but DePaul exposed it, and then Di Maria was able to step in once that French left side kind of got locked down a little bit. So it was somewhat of a technical masterclass from Argentina. And again, that's just something we hadn't always seen with a Messi Argentina side. It was much more that kicking and screaming, get the balls to the Italians, get the balls to Messi, and just make him work. That wasn't what this game was. Messi still put on an absolutely stunning performance. Obviously, I mean, he scored two goals and converted on his penalty in the penalty shootout. Like he was obviously phenomenal, but it wasn't 100% Messi, and that's just not something we've seen from Argentina before. And going into the World Cup, both of us talked about that, how that was the difference with this Argentina side and why they were a co-favorite, if you will, to hoist the trophy. And I think we saw exactly that.
Yeah. Overall, the final was just special. It was, I think I saw it was like the third or fourth, I think the fourth World Cup final ever to go into extra time, which I was pretty surprised about. But there really haven't been as many World Cup finals as you think. So that always throws me off because,
every 4 years, right?
Yeah. But, it was a special game, special tournament. You almost wish that France, I don't even know if we've touched on France being at like 50% strength the entire tournament. I think we've mentioned it, but this was not the French national team that the French people were expecting to go into the tournament, for better or for worse. They made the final. I've heard some things about Karim Benzema being a little bit of a cancer to that squad. I think he would have been able to play in this game, but it kind of sounds like the players and coaches didn't really want him around. But, players like N'Golo Kante, who, say what you will about his performances at Chelsea over the last few months or even last year, he's still special in a French shirt. Even Paul Pogba, he's one of the premier players in the world who's just different when he puts on his national team jersey. So, and then Christopher Nkunku, who could have had a, maybe a Kylian Mbappe 2018 type of tournament, his kind of coming out party. He was injured and we weren't able to get to see that, but that just speaks to the depth of the French and really the guys who came in, the Rabios, and I think that Tchouaméni would have played regardless. Maybe he wouldn't have started every game like he did in this World Cup, but the pieces that they were missing for them to still get to the final is really, really impressive.
Yeah, with both of these teams, I mean, Tchouaméni is I want to say it was extra time, might have been stoppage time in regular time, But like you have Tchouaméni coming off the bench if you're France, you have Lautaro Martinez coming off the bench if you're Argentina. Like just the somewhat embarrassment of riches on these two sides, and that's where as an American we get so excited about this American national team and this golden generation, and just shows you how far off we really are. Because Lautaro Martinez would play every single minute for the U.S. and he got bested by a 20-something, young 20-something, if that. I'm a Julian Alvarez guy. I should know how old he is, but young 20s at oldest. And he got bested by him and started because of it. And the Chouameni's, seeing him come on, like there's no way a guy like him doesn't start in the midfield for the U.S. So this was one of the, I don't want to say one of the first moments. It was a humbling experience as a U.S. fan because obviously Netherlands humbled the bleep out of us. But it was an extra humbling moment just seeing the type of legs and the type of skill these two sides were able to bring on so late in a match. It just shows how far off we are and how elite some of these other nations are. And again, that is the difference with this Argentina team. Like they didn't have a Lautaro Martinez to come off the bench in the past. Like it was Lautaro Martinez would have been the only other goal scorer on those past Argentinian sides, and they have that kind of capability off the bench. And say what you will about his missed chance and extra time, but at the end of the day, Lautaro Martinez is a fairly elite striker, and Argentina is able to bring that off the bench now to support Messi. It's just a different beast than we've seen in the past.
So counterpoint to that, you look at, and I know their top end talent's higher than the U.S., but you look at like a Croatia or even a Morocco who, they don't have those guys coming off the bench. So, we're talking about the standards set by champions and by finalists, which, I don't expect, and I know you don't expect the U.S. to get to in 2026.
Hey, now. Home field advantage, baby.
Yeah. But I mean, those two teams have shown you the last 2 years that you can get deep in this tournament. Look at Japan, some of those other teams that went far, you can beat those top end teams that are bringing the Lautaro Martinez's off the bench and the Eduardo Camavinga's off the bench, just by playing a sound game plan. But that's another podcast for another day because the U.S. doesn't often have sound game plans that they're able to execute to beat better sides. Dylan, let's do, if we're finished with this game, I want to do a kind of a rapid fire like grades.
All right, bring it.
The World Cup. It'll be subjects from this year's World Cup. A lot of them will be teams, but then there will be some other subjects as well. I don't really want any commentary.
All right.
You can give me like one sentence if you want to, just to keep it short because it's a pretty long list. We're going to start with the U.S. national team. It'll be 1 to 10. Let's say like a grade 6 would be meet expectations. Anything above that would be like, I was impressed. So U.S. men's national team.
6.5.
6.5.
Group stage was great. Knockout round was embarrassing. 6.5.
Yeah. All right. Fox Sports coverage of the World Cup.
Can I go lower than 1? We'll give it a half.
0.
Oh, I don't want to go 0. They covered all the games, and at this point, somewhat in the U.S., hey, cover all the games. All the games are on TV. I'll give them a 1.5.
I liked their set.
The set was cool. The graphics really cool. Were cool. The people were awful. Outside of Clint, love you, Clint.
All right, let's Alexi Lawless.
Yeah, that 0. Hard 0.
We're gonna do all the teams in Group B because that was the U.S.'s group. So England.
C. Oh, sorry. 6. I expected them to lose 6. On penalties, and they, in a way, lost on penalties. So met my expectations.
All right, Wales.
6. They
really. I would go a little bit lower with Wales. I'd go 5. I think they were disappointing.
I don't know. Like I
just think they had a little bit more.
I think people probably discounted Iran a little bit. So where they finished in the group, my expectations they met. They got a draw against the U.S. in a game they shouldn't have got a draw, so that kind of boosts it for me.
Yeah, Iran.
7. I think they probably outperformed most people's expectations, closer to my expectations probably, but it's still a Middle East team and they typically struggle, and I think they showed out well, minus their thrubbing by England, but I think most people expected that.
All right, let's do the 3 federations other than Europe and South America. I'll start with CONCACAF. What grade would you give CONCACAF for this World Cup?
4.
4? With the U.S. saving.
Yeah, I mean,
saving
Canada let me down, man. I was high on Canada. I mean, rightfully so. They won qualification, if you will, and I think
their group ended up being the group of death.
It did.
If you look at the results from the tournament.
It certainly did, and I think that's something I saw a lot from Canadian soccer Twitter, which is a weird thing that I found, but I found Canadian soccer Twitter, and that was a point that they kept bringing up, like, hey, our group wasn't as bad as it looked, and yeah, no, it really wasn't, but I would have expected them to at least pull a result here or there, and they just didn't show.
Yeah. What about AFCON?
I mean, purely on Morocco, I got to give them like an 8. I mean, really not even.
I also got it. We got to give Senegal props also with a Mane-less Senegal getting to the knockouts. I had serious questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, I bet on them to advance out of the group prior to the injury, but the fact that they were able to rebound from that injury in a pretty easy group, but they were still able to rebound and come out of the group, and we saw Morocco in the semifinals and didn't end up taking third, but yeah, I mean, Morocco was one of they were probably the second biggest story of the tournament, so I'll give AFCON an 8.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, the AFC.
7. Japan.
Really?
Japan showed out.
Yeah.
And Saudi Arabia beat the champion. So yeah, 7.
Didn't Korea got out of their group also, didn't they?
Yeah,
didn't Korea make the knockouts?
Yeah, they did. But like Korea was more expected, I think. Not expected, but less of a surprise for me than Japan coming out of their group. Japan coming out of that group, going into it, I mean, you got Spain and Germany, and you're able to come out of that group. That is remarkable. And then Saudi Arabia beating the eventual champion, the only team to beat the eventual champion. It's got to be higher than a 6. You could go 7. Maybe you could go 8 because they got 3 out. Oh, no, sorry. They only had 2 out. They had 2 out, but one of the ones that didn't get out beat the champion. So, yeah, 7 or 8.
All right, I'm going 8 for the AFC. I think Japan has become a team that, like, in future World Cups, I will probably pick them to get out of their group just because that seems to have become the fiber.
I'll tell you right now, in our host previews for the U.S., I was all about us being in Seattle. Mm-hmm. I want to be in Seattle if Japan's not in our group. I want as far away from the West Coast as possible if we're in Japan's group. Get me to Boston if we're going to be
Miami or Boston or something. Yeah.
Give me as far east as you can go if we're in Japan's group because they're a formidable team for sure. And I don't want any of our home field taken away. They're a team that would scare me going into 26. Now I don't know their roster. Nick could be sitting at home listening to this screaming about how they're going to lose 3 of their 5 best players. I don't know Japan that deep right now. But from the performances we saw from Japan in this World Cup, I certainly want nothing to do with them.
Yeah. All right, a few more teams, and then we'll move on from this topic. Let's go the Mexican national team. How disappointed were you? Obviously, it's less than a 6, but
I mean, I wasn't disappointed because I like seeing them not succeed. Like we had this conversation. You see Canada and Mexico as rivals. Canada's not a rival to me. I'll root for Canada. I hope Mexico fails all the time. So my personal grade, I give this a 10. I loved this Mexican performance. Absolutely loved it. No grit, very little goal scoring, and not a very good showing overall from them. So 10 out of 10. Good job, Mexico. Keep it up.
Mexico's definitely heading in the opposite direction of the U.S. and Canada as far as their soccer programs go. Obviously, you're going to give Argentina a 10, yes?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
10.
Spain and Germany, the two kind of favorites out of that Japan group.
I mean, can I give Germany the same I gave Alexi Lawless?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, I will.
I give Germany so Jamal Musiala was fantastic. He was still like top 5 in dribbles completed even after the World Cup was over and they didn't get out of their group. I didn't have a whole lot of expectations for Germany though. They're not it anymore. They're not sexy. I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to pick them second in this group, but I'm not confident in it. So I'll give them a 4. But I have real concerns with Germany going forward. I mean, Musiala is fantastic, Kimmich is fantastic, but
What after that? Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
you got a lot of
they're
turnover
pretty
everywhere else. Yeah,
they're a pretty old side, and Japan not Japan, Spain on the flip side, disappointing loss in the round of 16 probably, but it's a young team that will probably be one of the favorites in 2026.
I mean, they look great
Give
in
them a
groups.
6.
Yeah, they look great in group
Yeah.
stage. I'd probably go 7, a little bit above my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
With the understanding I didn't have expectations for them to make a run. Like I expected them to come out of the group, maybe win a round of 16 and then probably get bounced. And they got bounced a little earlier than I probably would have hoped. I mean, I'm not a Spain fan, but if I was a Spanish fan, a little earlier than I probably would have hoped or expected. But
They're a fun team to watch.
They're a lot
I
of fun. They're
watching.
super young. It almost felt like a American outcome for them. Like, hey, we're young, we're building. Now it's different because it's Spain and they've won things, many things, and the U.S. hasn't. So like that expectation for the fans is a little different. But from a unbiased perspective, I'd put them kind of close to where the U.S. is at as terms of, for them it's a rebuild, for us it's a new build. But yeah, I'd probably give them probably a 7. It was solid, but I'm not going to blow it off the charts because they did get bounced in the round of 16.
Last 2, they're non-teams. First one is the 4 a.m. group stage games.
All right, so I have multiple feelings here. I love the idea. It's 5 a.m. for me. Loved the idea.
Oh, yeah.
I was hyped for it. Set all the alarms. Normally fell asleep at halftime.
Yeah.
So, like, conceptually, it's a 10 out of 10. For, like, actual execution on my part, give it, like, a 6. Because like I got up, I was there. I just didn't make it through. So like
those first couple days, I was like wide awake, ready to go, cooking bacon, coffee was on, and then once we got to like the second round,
you're like, I got 2 more of these each group. This is tough.
Lastly, the refereeing in this World Cup. How do you feel about it?
So which part are you wanting me to? Because I got finals thoughts. I got all the finals thoughts. That was offsides. That Argentina goal was offsides. I mean, should it be is a whole nother discussion. But
that booty be thick though.
You got to have a thin booty if you want to play defense, apparently. But what we had seen in this World Cup was any limb or appendages. I think that's what they call those. Fingers, is offsides, and fingertips were offsides. And now, as I said, whole nother argument. Do we want to get that nitpicky? And I think I'm kind of on board with you. I don't know if I need to get that nitpicky, but if we are going to call things that way, call them throughout. The penalty that was given to Argentina for their first goal, clearly dragging his feet behind, looking for contact in the box. And you watch enough soccer, you know that is exactly what they're trying to avoid when calling penalties. You don't want to reward the forward.
Depends on the league, I would say.
It does. But like at the heart and at the core of the game, you're not trying to reward somebody for dragging feet looking for contact. And we saw that. And
generally so.
It drew a penalty and Argentina converted and we move on. But it felt like at times in the first half, at least, it was all Argentina. Every call was Argentina. Everything went to Argentina. And I do feel like it evened out in the second half, and not just because of the penalties France was given, but like overall, even in the midfield, the officiating kind of evened itself out. But there were certainly times in that first half, at least of this finals, that felt, I don't want to say scripted because that makes it sound overly rigged, but it felt like, let's throw Messi a bone here and there, you know, and there was a foul I can think of. I think it was in the first half, maybe it was early second. Messi and a French player went up for a ball in the air. French guy purely just out jumped Messi. He's my height and made a great play on the ball. Messi puts his shoulder into the chest and it's a foul on France. Like there were times like that in this match where it just felt, again, I don't want to say scripted, but it felt giving the benefit of the doubt to Argentina because it's what we all wanted to see. So from that side, with all of the conspiracies and all of the, talk about bribery and rigging the World Cup as a host, like getting the World Cup host being rigged, I did at times in the finals feel like it felt a little dirty. I think you can point back to a couple occasions throughout group play and the round of 16 specifically that I kind of felt that way as well. Um, Overall, though, one thing I really enjoyed about the officiating, I don't love the timing, and we talked about this early in our World Cup podcast, but I really enjoyed the fact that we were actually adding stoppage time. I think it is better and more accurate for the game to average 5 to 6 minutes a half of stoppage time because that's what we actually see in stoppage time. My one gripe on it
Yeah.
is why are we all of a sudden enforcing this in the World Cup? Because the players early on are like, hey man, I'm not ready to play another extra 15 minutes. And non-soccer
Yeah.
people are like, dude, just run another 15 minutes, get over it. But like if you've ever played soccer or even like followed soccer, you understand how much time 15 minutes is on the field. So I'm kind of split on the officiating. I'll probably just give it a 6. It's FIFA, so I expected it to be a little dirty and a little grimy. But I do think there were some things that were done really well, specifically the extra time. Again, don't love choosing to start to enforce that in the World Cup, but as a whole for the game of soccer, I'd like to see us transition to that a little bit, where we do see more accurate stoppage time. So that kind of boosts it from what would have been a 4 or a 5 to closer to a 6 for me because I did see some things that I would like the game of football to progress towards, and mainly that being that stoppage time.
Yeah, I had real concerns about the card situation. I think 2 cards before the semifinals you're suspended for a game is absolutely ludicrous. But I thought the referees did a pretty good job in letting the players play
Yes.
from the perspective of cards. Thought some of the penalties were excessive, or like some of the penalties given were questionably excessive, and also some of the stoppage time was a little bit excessive. I agree with you. 5 to 6 minutes, really 4 to 6 minutes, I think is the sweet spot. But once you start getting 8 and 9, unless there's like an injury where the guy's laying on the field for
Like
a
today,
large amount of time,
that's
it's
in the first half. Lloris is
yeah, where
down for
Lloris was down.
4 or 5 minutes. There was 2 goals.
Yeah,
You add all that up, it's 6, 7, 8 minutes. So like I
yeah,
enjoyed that part of it because I do think that is more accurate. But early on, like I think there was a game in the first round. I don't remember which game it was, but I'm pretty sure I saw 10 minutes of stoppage time in the
yeah,
first half. And it's like, all right, maybe let's find a happy median there. There probably wasn't actually 10 minutes, but I do appreciate
yeah,
not just throwing 1 minute up on the board because it's the first half. And like as Premier League fans, if I see more than 2 minutes on the board, regardless of what happened, there could have been a stretcher brought out and 2 guys taken off with limbs hanging off of the stretcher. And I go, more than two
yeah.
minutes, what is that? But I think for the accuracy of the game and like correct officiating, I do appreciate the idea of trying to keep it more accurately. So I do give FIFA props for doing that. Again, weird to just bring that on in the World Cup seemingly without telling anybody because all the pundits
Mm-hmm.
and all the players and all the coaches seem surprised. So like that was a little weird, but the concept of bringing that extra time on or that stoppage time on, I appreciate, and I hope we see that continue forward, especially as we transition into Premier League and Champions League. I hope that's something that the whole footballing world kind of grasps and rolls with a little bit, and it'll take time to perfect. We'll probably see some 8, 9 minutes that maybe that was a little much, but I do appreciate not just throwing 1 minute up because it's the first half because you don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our accolades. And let's try to not just be chalk with these. I know it's easy to give Messi or Mbappe the player of the tournament, and you can if you want to. But player of the tournament, who are you going to give that to?
You said we're not going to be
Are
chalk,
you,
but like, how am I not giving it to Messi? Yeah,
yeah,
I mean the performance, especially in the knockout stage. I think we even probably talked about it. I was not disappointed in him, but a little underwhelmed in him in the group stage. Um, Maybe part of that is just being a veteran and saving it. Like, who knows? Messi's,
mm-hmm.
in your opinion, the greatest of all time. My opinion, top 3 of all time. Like, he knows what he's doing, so it's hard to fault him on a quiet group stage. But the performance he put on in the knockout stage was just unbelievable. The things he was able to do, he looked 26, 27, 28 again. And it
Yeah,
was remarkable. I know we don't want to be chalk, but like I'm not going to sit here and not give golden ball to Messi. I mean, it is what it is. He put on a phenomenal performance and fully deserves his trophy.
Yeah, I say it. I'm going to give it to Messi too. I was speaking more to the following accolades, I think. But the winner, the guy who wins the tournament, the guy who's the best player on the winning team, he seemingly willed his team to victory in a handful, maybe not a handful, a couple of games. And they really couldn't have done it without him. We've said numerous times he had more help in this tournament than he's had in the past, but I do think that Messi was the best player. Kylian Mbappé for France is obviously also up there.
But like you said, I think if we're talking golden ball and best player, I think there's like very, very legitimate reasons to not give it to Mbappe. Like obviously he wins the golden boot, so he had a good tournament. But there were times that he was shut down, and that isn't. Again, it's I'm not trying to shade Mbappe and his performance. I think he was obviously phenomenal. But if we're talking best player of the tournament and not best goal scorer, and you're not picking Messi, and unsubscribe. Actually, don't stay subscribed. We want all the subscribers.
Yeah, we need all we can get. Second is going to be young player of the tournament. I think Enzo Fernandez actually won it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Who are you going to give it to?
Like, I want to give it to Musiala because I think Germany would have.
That's who I was going to give.
Like,
it to.
I want to. It feels weird, like giving it to a guy on a team that should have advanced out of group. No offense to Japan, comfortably. Everybody expected them to advance comfortably, and they looked awful. But he was phenomenal. Like, to have that type of performance on a side like Germany, like if we saw I hate comparing these two because I'm not comparing them, but if we saw a performance like his out of a Gio Reyna or a Pulisic on the U.S., we would be enthralled and thrilled. And even if we didn't make it through, like, we would be singing praises to them because of who we are. And I don't want to take it away from him because he plays for Germany, that he doesn't deserve it. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal. Without him, Germany, you could argue, wouldn't have secured a point in group stages. That's how bad the rest of the team looked, and he just looked that good.
Yeah, and Enzo Fernandez had a fantastic tournament, and somebody's going to pay a ridiculous amount of money for him now because of the tournament he had. But I really like the way Musiala played, and he's the best player on a Bayern Munich team that has a really good chance to win the Champions League. So it's nothing new. Most people knew who Jamal Musiala was that follow soccer going into this World Cup. But if you watch the group stage, he really announced himself. Surprise of the tournament, obviously Morocco. I think for both of us.
Yep. Without discounting their
there,
performance, I just don't have much more to say. First AFCON team to make it, and it wasn't the AFCON team going into, like, if Senegal made the semifinals with a healthy Mane, you go, all right, yeah, sure. But like, I don't think.
Yeah.
I would love to know how many people bet on Morocco to make the semifinals. Like, the performance they put forward was incredible. I've sung the praises of their manager. Took over the team last day of August, so might as well say September, and then took this team into the World Cup in November and made a semifinal. It was out of a tough group,
unbelievable,
and the lack of goals they gave up throughout. They were incredible.
Yeah. Flop of the tournament. Let's go non-Germany. I'll go Uruguay, and specifically Darwin Nunez. I mean, good Lord. The guy, like,
is rough. Like, we were all waiting for rough. It. This was supposed to be his, I don't want to say coming out party, because we've talked about him as everybody has kind of talked about him as somewhat of a flop at Liverpool, and I think that's been overblown. He has put up very good numbers there, but this was supposed to be like his continued coming out party, if you will. I don't want to, again, call it a coming out party because we all know who he is and how amazing he is, but it felt like it was supposed to be his, like, I am here, take notice world, and we saw
and here to
none
stay,
of that.
Like, consistently stay, which is what he just has so much trouble with. He's such a high and low player as far as emotions go. He just flat disappeared in this World Cup. He was nowhere to be seen. So him and his team is probably going to be my flop of the tournament, obviously having in mind Germany not advancing out of their group.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else on that?
Not for me. No.
Nope. All right, real quick, let's do best 11. It's really hard not to do best 11 without picking mostly from the two finalists, or at least the semifinalists. And I think most of this team comes from there, but I tried to mix in a few that were maybe some round of 16 teams. We're only going to do one for the group, and I think, you know, as far as the whole tournament goes, goalkeeper for me is Livakovic.
Yes. Thank you.
However, Emi Martinez, the dude, I mean, he won the World Cup, and he
won the Golden Glove,
three penalty shootouts, and but from start to finish, I think Livakovic for me is probably the goalkeeper of the tournament.
Yeah, Livakovic put on a world-class performance, stood on his head in penalties, didn't have a really weird reaction to winning Golden Glove like Emi Martinez. That was weird. If you haven't seen it, maybe we'll throw it up, maybe we won't, but go look that up. It was weird. I don't like Emi Martinez. Weird. As much as I'm happy Argentina won, I don't think I really like Argentina. And Emi Martinez is part of that. I just don't really like him. So, yeah, Livakovic is my
guy. Right back, I mean, there's really not much debate for me. It's Achraf.
It's Kieran Trippier. Oh, yeah, Hakimi. No, yeah, Hakimi he was phenomenal.
The Moroccan man, he was great.
As I said on our last episode, he's the solution to Mbappé. And if you are a solution to Mbappé, you're the best right back in the world.
Unfortunately, they are on the same club team, which you can't watch whenever you want to, unlike most leagues.
Unless you have beIN Sports. Get the YouTube extra sports package and watch the French League.
Left back, it's tough. I mean, Mazraoui and Mitoma were both great. Acuna won.
Yeah, it's Acuna.
He was good for most of the tournament with Argentina, so he's probably my first selection. But there were some good left backs in this tournament. I mean, even Luke Shaw had a good tournament. Honestly, I did not expect.
Yeah, we talked ad nauseum the stackedness of that English right back position, and Luke Shaw outplayed all of them. And if you watch enough Premier League, you probably didn't see that coming. So credit to Luke Shaw, but still not my pick because you're English.
Center back, Josko Gvardiol. I almost want to put him in the argument for young player of the tournament, the 20-year-old center back.
When we talked about young player, he was probably mine leading up to Messi just dummying him. And that's like probably not fair. He's 20. Like, you're going to get dummied by Messi at 20. But like, if he was able to even slow down Messi, he would have been my young player, even if they lost. But he just got worked by Messi and was exposed. But certainly should make our best 11, in my opinion, because of everything he did up until that semifinal and continued to do in the game nobody watched for third place.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was on Saturday.
Yeah, I threw it on at like halftime. I missed the thrilling start, and then I just buckled in for a pretty slow second half.
The second center back, I mean, it's pretty much up for grabs, I think, unless you have somebody else that just stands out. Nathan Ake was really good
He's probably
for the Netherlands. Thiago Silva, Brazil certainly wasn't eliminated because of their defense. And then Yoshida from Japan, I think he had a good tournament.
For me it's Ake. I mean, he wasn't really asked to do a ton, but what he was able to put forward, especially against the U.S., I mean, there was no getting through him against the U.S., and it won them. Won them arguably the knockout round game, and he looked very good in group stage as well. One of those guys doesn't consistently start either for his club team. Certainly heavily in the rotation, but he isn't an everyday starter.
Right.
So I think that I might be a little biased towards that. I think that's really impressive. Like a Julian Alvarez, as we may I'll get into as we move forward here. But those guys, I always give a little extra credit to those guys that play on those super teams, if you will, for their club and don't quite sniff the everyday lineup and are able to put forward performances. And he's one of those.
Yeah. In a Netherlands center back room, if you will, that's pretty stacked. You know, he started over De Ligt, which I was surprised about until I saw the tournament he had. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Moving on to the midfield, I think
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I know you
Nope.
hate this. I'll start with Sofran Amberbat. Is that how you say it? Amberbat. Yes.
Are you done talking about
Um,
Bruno? I took my headphones off. I'm not listening to.
I'm starting with Amberbat actually.
Yeah. He was great.
Yeah,
No, he had a phenomenal tournament. Really, I mean,
he did.
he was probably the if there is a trophy for it, which there isn't, but maybe we'll make one. Unsung hero. Amrabat was phenomenal. He's going to get a lot of big club attention because of this World Cup, and rightfully so, because he put that Moroccan side on his back in the midfield and was able to. I mean, yes, Ziyech is there, and like he had other players around him, but he was really able to lock down that midfield there.
He was, yeah. And then secondly, I mean, you have to give it to Bruno Fernandes from Portugal. He was Portugal's best. They would not have made the quarterfinals without him. Dylan's not listening right now because he hates him, but yeah,
we're done. All right, cool.
we'll say that.
And then if he was really good, they would have made it further. That's all I'll say. But we can move on.
The third one, it's really up for debate. You could put Griezmann there because he is technically a center attacking mid. I kind of left it open for a player from a non-finals team. I think Luka Modric still was just an orchestrator.
He was Modric was Modric until they ran into Argentina. I mean, he did not look good in the semifinals. I think that was the biggest thing that stuck out to me in that semifinals was how off he looked. But leading up to that, he was everything we've seen him be in the World Cup. He's the reason they took third. And if you pick Croatia to finish third going into this, like, kudos to you. Just like nobody picked them to finish second in 18. Like, but he just has that big game. What's that meme with the X-ray and that he's got that dog in him? Like
that dog in him.
He just does. And yeah, I mean, he was phenomenal. I think here I would put Griezmann. Because technically that's more what he plays, and Griezmann,
and because you want to put Alvarez in the forward.
Yeah, but if we're being honest, France would have not even made the semis, in my opinion, if it wasn't for Griezmann.
Yeah,
he was by far their best player. Yeah, Mbappé had 7 goals. Mbappé is Mbappé, but Griezmann dominated the midfield in all of the games they were successful. And we saw a game where he wasn't successful and didn't dominate the midfield. And we saw the impact it had on France. I mean, he got subbed off and they looked better. And like, it's weird that it would make me want to put him in my best 11 saying they're better without him. But it just showed the fact that like Argentina had to game plan around him. They did so successfully. Didn't know what to do after that, but they're like, hey, we did our job and then we'll see what happens. And we saw what happened and France fought back. But Griezmann, up until the finals, was the linchpin for this French side, and he was phenomenal. And he gets a lot of crap at the club level lately, especially at Leti before that contract extension. We joked about it on our Champions League episodes, how they were making sure he didn't play more than 25 minutes so they didn't have to pay him and all that. And it's like, you see what he put forward in the World Cup. It's like, why are you not trying to pay this guy? And eventually they have since then. But like, that's one of those things. It's like, we saw why he is one of the best attacking midfielders in the world. And that was on display this tournament. So for me, he's my third midfielder. If you want to include him as attacker, because that's kind of what he plays more as, if you watch the game, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm putting him at my midfield because that's technically his position.
Fair enough. Forwards, 2 of them are, locked in stone with Messi and
3 are
Mbappé.
locked in stone.
And 3, if you put Griezmann in the midfield, then all 3 are probably locked in stone with Julian Alvarez.
My guy!
A guy who really didn't even, I mean, he was not the starter for Argentina for, I think, even 2 of the games. I think it wasn't until the 3rd game where he was like the starter at striker. Arturo Martinez had just a really poor tournament, and Julian Alvarez said, "Fine,
perfect. I'll take it.
I'll take the opportunity and run with it."
And I think we touched on this in our semifinal, but maybe we didn't. Not getting too deep into club football. This is our World Cup recap, but I think it feels weird to say after the first half he's had. It makes Haaland somewhat disposable. Like, if you're Man City, you don't need to break the bank for him. You can let him go to Real and you can still be Man City, because we've seen what you can do with an elite progressing forward attack around him, and he finishes with the best of them. He's size wise, build wise, not at all Giroud esque, but he has that like just knack for scoring goals in the big moments like Giroud. And Giroud, you could argue, should be in this as well, because he put forward again a performance we didn't expect to have to see. I mean, you have the Ballon d'Or winner in your French attack. Giroud probably wasn't sniffing the field except for extra time in the knockout stages with a healthy Benzema, and he finishes with 4 goals. I mean, so Giroud, you can make a really, really strong argument for. I give it to Alvarez because I'm an Alvarez guy, but I think Giroud put forward equally as an impressive performance for the same reasons we're all impressed with Alvarez.
Yeah. I mean, heavy France and Argentina influence, obviously, the 2 finalists, and Argentina finally got it done. Dylan, you have any last thoughts on this World Cup? I think we're running pretty long, but there's just so much to talk about on this one.
Real quick, I won't spend too much time,
Yeah.
but you and I touched on this personally, and we haven't talked about it on the podcast. I think Hugo Lloris was phenomenal. I mean, this is a French side you expect to dominate games, and they didn't. I mean, he stood on his head today. He stood on his head against England, less so against, Morocco, because no offense to Morocco, it's Morocco. But like at the times he was called upon against Morocco, he did as well. And you said it to me in text message. You're like, man, I'm almost like envious of this Hugo Lloris. Like I'm almost a little worried that he's playing this well. And for me, it's like if I saw Nick Pope doing what Hugo Lloris did for France, but for England, I'd be amped. And so as a Tottenham fan, for you should be, in my opinion, very excited about the performance he put forward. We haven't, I don't think, talked about him enough on the podcast. He played phenomenal, kind of unexpectedly had to play phenomenal. So that might be why it goes underappreciated, because yes, he plays for France, defending world champs, like all of that. But he played great. It's tough to say you give up 3 goals in the final and played great, but he made some stellar saves when called upon today, and has done that throughout the knockouts. And I think he wasn't asked to do a ton in group stage because France is France, but once they got to the knockouts, he was called upon, and he kind of answered that call.
Yeah, he's a fantastic shot stopper. Really, the thing with Lloris is he's going to make a weird mistake with his feet at some point, and he didn't really
very
that
close
resulted
today.
In like but I mean the French defense was pretty bad in this World Cup at times. I mean, they were shaky in the box, and Lloris, I he had a great tournament, absolutely, and I do like Hugo Lloris. He is getting old, and he doesn't move very well, so if you get a rebound, he's just not going to be able to be nimble on his feet. But as far as shot stopping goes, he's really good. I wish he had a little bit more of a bite to him. You saw Emi Martinez; it was Bush League what he was doing during the penalties, but Hugo Lloris wasn't even talking to the penalty taker. He wasn't getting in his head, and I would have maybe liked to see a little bit more of that. I mean, two of the goals he succeeded today were penalties, and he got his hand on one of them. Gillian just had too much on it. So Lloris did have a good tournament. He's the captain of the French side, captain of our club side after Harry Kane's contract debacle from last summer, where he lost the captaincy. But yeah, he did have a great tournament, and this is his last go with the French national team as a 36-year-old, whatever he is. So hats off to him. Yeah, good shout.
Yeah, I mean, again, recapping the whole tournament, it was awesome. I'm again half super pumped that this is the World Cup leading into the North American World Cup. Half super pissed this wasn't our World Cup, because seeing Messi lift a trophy in Dallas or Atlanta, I don't think we know for sure yet, but Dallas or Atlanta, like that would just be the pinnacle of soccer in America. And I know that is sorry, women's national team, sorry, men's national team, if you make a run, but like that would have been the pinnacle of soccer moments that took place in the U.S. And I do still feel cheated. Again, I'm not going to sit here and rant for 20 minutes on why I feel cheated. Go watch FIFA Uncovered. Go look at Sepp Blatter's most recent interview about how the U.S. should have had this World Cup. I am still bitter But from a growing the game perspective, it's tough to ask for a better World Cup leading into the U.S. because, again, Italian national team fan, love that we won a World Cup. This is my favorite World Cup. It's beyond excited that we started this podcast for essentially this World Cup and at this time, because this was incredible to talk about. I hope people have enjoyed listening to us talk about it, because I've had a ball talking about it, and it's been an incredible World Cup. And if you liked the World Cup, pick a Premier League side, pick Leeds, please. Everybody should pick Leeds or Newcastle, but I get not wanting oil money or Google money, whatever you guys are getting. But seriously, it's an unreal sport. If you're a casual that tuned in because of the World Cup, hitch your wagon to something and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah. With that, 2022 World Cup here at the Planet Soccer headquarters comes to an end. We appreciate you guys listening. Like, subscribe, follow, share, all of that. And we'll talk to you all this weekend. Let's get back into the Premier League. You'll have a great rest of your week.
How are the lads?
Great week. Yeah, today's Sunday.
Today is
so yeah,
Sunday.
Have a great week, guys. We'll talk to y'all later.